And a live look from Capitol Hill, where it appears Democrats will retake control of the Senate by a razor-thin margin. But control of the House is still up in the air. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Cook.
And I'm Brian Yamamoto. The House now expected to come down to a few key races right here in California. The outcome of those races could also determine which California lawmaker is the next Speaker of the House, Republican Kevin McCarthy or current Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi now says Democrats had better than expected results in the midterms, and the attack against her husband will influence what she decides to do next.
My decision will again be rooted in what the wishes of my family and the wishes of my caucus. But it wasn't just the attack, it was the Republican reaction to it, which was disgraceful.
And there's a whole lot riding on those last few undecided House races. Here to help us break it all down, make sense of everything, Professor David McCuan from Sonoma State University. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's get into it. We just heard from Speaker Pelosi that the wishes of her party and the Republican response to the attack on her husband will play a big role in what she decides moving forward. What did you take away from her comments?
Look, if you were going to talk about Speaker Pelosi prior to this last Tuesday's midterm election, you would have thought that she was out. But that number that Republicans are looking at, perhaps a number of around 219 seats, obviously a House majority for Republicans. But that's a difficult majority for Kevin McCarthy. He's not a gifted legislator. He's going to have to herd a lot of cats. You've got 4 different types of freedom caucuses. And that means that if you were Speaker Pelosi or Democrats, you would at least mull picking off a Republican or 2, bringing something that gets you to 218 and denies the Republicans the opportunity to lead. This is not a Liz Cheney speakership that would fill that void. It's that you can call a House floor vote for a speaker at any time. So if McCarthy were to mess up in March, mess up in 6 months from now, it doesn't mean that Nancy Pelosi or Speaker Pelosi is out or gone. She could come back, and that's an important element here of the numbers and the final numbers that we're going to see really coming out of California, because the fence has been built, and that fence actually might be on the Democrats' favor, not necessarily on the Republicans' favor.
Yeah, there's a lot of strategy and gamesmanship to all of this on both sides. It looks like Republicans may take control of the House by a very thin margin, potentially just 1 or 2 seats. So what other challenges is such a small margin present for the leadership of whichever party comes out on top?
Yeah, look, you have a lot of changes that are going on the Democratic side in terms of the nature of the coalition, generational change that's happening. And your viewers need to remember that, look, back in 1930, there was a flu pandemic that hit. 14 members of Congress that were elected on Election Day were not alive by the time they were sworn in. 5 members of Congress, this past Congress, passed away, 4 of them Republicans. So there's a lot at play in terms of health, in terms of the machinations and the politics of this that can affect what happens moving forward. All of that presents many more challenges for Republicans staying whole, because look, the GOP is about to enter into a civil war, and that civil war has in its sights the future of Donald Trump and the future of Kevin McCarthy and what that looks like, as well as who's going to lead the Senate. So Republicans are going to be shooting at each other, if you will, and Democrats are going to want to happily sit on the sidelines, even though they may not quite be in the majority, particularly on the House side, but on the Senate side.
Yeah, one of the big trends for the midterms was the lack of success, or some success, for candidates who have denied that Joe Biden is the rightfully elected president. What does that tell us, and what impact do you think that's going to have on the entire Congress moving forward?
Look, on Congress's side, it probably has a limited impact. There's probably a bit of a culling that goes on there. But in terms of what happens down ballot at the state level, that's where the impact is, where Donald Trump went out. But the money that he is collecting is going to him. It's not necessarily going to those candidates. So position for what happens tomorrow night, presumably announces that he's going to run for president, and what's going to happen down ballot, that presents some problems, especially in a key battleground state like Florida, where DeSantis wins by 20 points and Marco Rubio isn't sure who should be leading the Senate for Republicans. All of that provides some space or gap between a Republican Party still owned by Donald Trump, but not necessarily going lockstep with Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's interesting, because, you know, the big headline of the night was it was the red wave that wasn't, and the big loser in all this was Donald Trump, because so many of the candidates that he went out and endorsed didn't win. So do you think the Republican Party is over Donald Trump, that they feel like they need to move on?
No. They're going to have this civil war where they're going to decide exactly how close they're going to be to Donald Trump because they're not sure, because he delivers that 85, 90% of those people who believe in him. Where Republicans are trying to find some room is how to win in some of those marginal districts and key swing states. And this is what makes Georgia not less important. It makes what happens in Georgia with Warnock and Herschel Walker that much more important moving forward. It makes what happens with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema very important. And Democrats have a hard map in 2024 in the U.S. Senate. So this battle is just beginning. It's going to be a complicated, complex, and conflicted 2022, 2023, headed to the 2024 election.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, Professor David McCuan from Sonoma State, thank you so much.